Greetings, everyone. Hi, my name is Benjamin Forshner. Thank you all for joining us today for the first in a series of webinars hosted by VisionBound International. Our mission at VisionBound is to release human potential by accelerating greatness in people, teams, and organizations. And today, I want to introduce you to Jaylin Jones. Jaylin Jones is the Executive Vice President of VisionBound. He's a veteran of education with 37 years of public school teaching and administrative experience. Jaylin has been nationally recognized for excellence as a teacher, principal, and central office administrator. And since his time retiring from the public school system, Jaylin has dedicated his time teaching invaluable skills to educators and schools, both public and private, throughout the country. Today, we've asked Jaylin to share some insight on how to build loyalty within your community and in your school. As a matter of housekeeping items, there is a download link available at the bottom of your panel for a handout. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the Ask a Question feature on the GoToWebinar panel, and we'd love to have Jeff or Jaylin answer those questions for you. So without any ado, I'll turn the time over to Jaylin.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well wherever you are. It's a beautiful day here in Spanish Fork, Utah. And on the webinar with us as well today, we have Jeff Hare, who happens to be the principal at Utah Connections Academy, and we'll hear from him a couple of times during the presentation as well. I want to just jump right in and talk about loyalty. That was in the title of our webinar today. I don't know how many of you are like me, but I grew up in this little town, the place where I still live, and I had a very loyal companion. And when I saw this picture, I thought of that loyal companion. My dog's name was Poncho, and Poncho would have done anything for me, and he was the epitome of loyalty. And we're going to talk about that today and talk about how important loyalty can be in your charter school or your charter school organization. I want to refer you to a book, and it's interesting, the title's kind of a long title. It's a book written by Jeff Gitomer, and his concept there is that customer satisfaction is worthless, customer loyalty is priceless. And in Jeff's book, he makes the connection that we're talking about two entirely different animals when we talk about loyalty as compared to satisfaction. And the idea is that if we can focus on loyalty and develop loyal customers, patrons, students, and employees, we have a much better environment in our charter schools. Loyalty, the idea of brand loyalty, is that idea that when a consumer identifies strongly with this particular brand or product or school, then they stick with that particular brand when it's time to buy or time to enroll new students, time to talk to the neighbors, those kinds of things. But I wondered here, Jeff, if you could take a minute and talk about how does this concept of brand loyalty tie into charter schools?
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, one of the things about brand loyalty is charter school parents vote and shop with their feet. And so ensuring that you are creating a brand that keeps them coming back. They have many, many options in the state of Utah. You've got 140 different charter schools that they can go to. Actually, I'm part of a virtual charter school, and there are a number of options in the virtual world. So helping to be able to understand how important it is to get your staff on board is critical to ensuring not only that you have students returning, but also that the word of mouth from parents especially is out there working on your behalf.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. That's really a great reminder. And, you know, as we have done our study and as we presented at various places in other parts of the country and lots of presentations here in Utah, we've identified at least 4 critical things that loyal customers do. And as we have discussed these and researched these, we found that one of the more important things is that they advocate for your school. Boy, it's great to have someone who's your advocate. They might be in the grocery store pushing their cart around and hear somebody say something about your school. They're to advocate. They're there to answer questions, to help support you and your organization. They also refer their friends. And as you think about this, if children come to your school, they want to stay at your school, and they have their friends also get referred and join your school, it is something that will keep your enrollment up and also keep your enrollment increasing in the future. I have always been pleased when people will offer their suggestions, because then I know what really matters to them, and this is something that loyal customers do. But of the four things, I think the most important thing that our loyal customers can do is trust. Trust us, trust you with their children. When they trust us, then those little things don't bother them as much. They give us more time for instruction. They're not in the little details of things. They trust that we know what we're doing, and then we can move forward in a much better, more successful manner. So I'd like you to be thinking for just a minute. We're going to talk about this in a little bit more in a second, but think about who's won your loyalty. Who are you loyal to? And I want to talk about an organization and about a man who truly understood that. You probably heard of him, Walt Disney, as he was creating Disneyland, which then led to many other theme parks and other wonderful adventures over the years. As he said, you know, we're going to do what we do so well that the people who see it will want to see it again and bring friends. And that's how the idea of the happiest place on earth came to be. You know, and as a parent, I understood that. I felt like I did. Our kids wanted to go. We took them to Disneyland a lot, but it was just a couple of years ago that I truly started to understand how well Disneyland had this figured out. At the time, my son, you can see in this picture on the right, his name's Nate, and his son, Miles, were living with us. It was prior to him getting married, and they were there at our home, and one day Miles came running up to me and says, "Hey, Grandpa, my dad and I are going to Disneyland. Do you want to go with us?" That was kind of code for, "Hey, Grandpa, my dad thinks that maybe you could organize that and help us get there and back safely." So we had a wonderful time getting ready to go. As we're getting ready, I said, "Miles, why did you want to go?" And he said, "Well, I want to go in October, Grandpa, because I've heard that you can trick or treat at Disneyland." And he was so excited. The night before we were leaving, he was packing his costume, and I had this thought and turned to my son and said, "Hey, Nate, do you need to sign up for that? Is this trick or treat thing something you need to sign up for or pay for separately?" And he says, "No, don't worry. We just need to show up." Well, being the paranoid kind of person that I am, I checked online, and wouldn't you know, you do have to sign up. And it was sold out for every night that we planned to be there. Oh, nothing is worse than a sad grandson when you're a grandpa, and our little Miles was very, very sad. And as we walked into Disneyland the next day, two heads were down, and I happened to notice the customer service booth, and I said, "Nate, why don't you just go ask, see if there's a way that you could still get in to do some trick-or-treating with Miles." And the funnest experience, one of the more enjoyable experiences I've ever had, was when Nate went up to the window, explained the situation, and the lady behind the window looked out and saw Miles. Her face lightened up. She brought him over. She discussed things with him and asked why he was there. And he said, "Well, I was going to go trick-or-treating." She says, "Well, you can." And this moment tells you when I became a loyal customer of Disneyland, and also when Miles became a loyal customer of Disneyland. And whether it's Disney World, Disneyland, or wherever in the world we might be, that particular moment when he was able to find true joy and happiness there because of someone going a little bit beyond the rules to help out made an incredible difference for us. So we're going to kind of analyze that a little bit today. We want to talk about how do you measure loyalty. So you think about your particular organization, a charter school, and I know we've got folks on the line who might have multiple charter schools in their organization, but it's the idea of how you measure loyalty. And we wanted to share something really kind of exciting because it's simple and it gives you a great idea of where you are with your customers. It came from another book, a book by a man by the name of Fred Reichheld. He came up with what is known as the ultimate question. And the question is this: how likely is it that you would recommend us to a friend or colleague? Now, Fred was really involved in business, and he worked very hard to figure out how to do this question, and he actually added on a little follow-up question, which is why. So as we analyze this, I'd like you to think about how this might work for you. So think to yourself, when was you got to have a sit-down restaurant experience in your mind. So if it's just fast food, try to think of a time recently when You went into a restaurant and you were served. Think about that restaurant experience. And now, would each of you, as you're looking at your download paper, hopefully by now, and looking at that Net Promoter Score activity, think of that restaurant, and at the moment of leaving, how would you have rated the restaurant on the loyalty scale if they asked you this question? Based on your experience here, how likely is it you would recommend our restaurant to a friend or family member? So think about that and go ahead and circle that while I tell you just an experience I had the other day. Something that several friends of mine and I like to do often is ride ATVs, all-terrain vehicles here in Utah. We have an incredible scenery. And we had just had a wonderful long ride, and there was a little restaurant in this tiny little town. And as we went in, it was obvious that they were overwhelmed. They had more people there than they had people staffed to really take care of, and we weren't in a super hurry, so I was kind of just watching how things happened, and I watched the lady who was obviously in charge, and she had one of those trainee people, and she turned to this young girl, and I overheard her as we walked in. She said, "Now don't freak out, we'll handle this. Just make sure that we take care of everyone and get them what they need." And we had a wonderful experience there. It was fun for me to watch her serve others. So as you think about that and think about your answers, I want to describe to you how this works. So if you answer that question and you were one of these people who were very highly unlikely to recommend that restaurant to your friends and colleagues, you would be what's called a detractor. We'll talk about those in just a minute. If you rated that restaurant as a 7 or an 8, you would be considered a passive. And if you were a 9 or a 10, you would be a loyal customer. For this particular restaurant, I'm a loyal customer. In fact, I've got my next trip lined up to go out there. I'm going to take grandkids that can ride ATVs, and we will be in that restaurant, and I will make sure to remind that person in charge that she did a great job to get me back. And I'm telling you about those things as well. So the way we figure these things out is, and it's listed there on your handout, how to compute your Net Promoter Score. You put down your percentage of promoters, you subtract your percentage of detractors, and that gives you what's called an NPS, a Net Promoter Score. And you might notice on there, well, what happened to the passives? Well, they don't figure in. They are easily wooed. They could turn into a detractor, they could turn into a promoter, but when we're figuring out a Net Promoter Score, we don't necessarily show them.
Lynn, if I could just interrupt you for a second. We have a question from one of the participants who'd like to know just a bit more about detractors. Could you define for everybody what a detractor is?
Yes, thanks, Ben. Detractors are those people who are out and about in a community doing you damage. They are hurting your reputation. They're causing you problems. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, again on one of these ATV trips, I was with some friends, and we were going into the beautiful little area of Moab, Utah. This is quite the mecca for cyclists and Jeep riders and ATVs, UTVs. And this particular Friday afternoon, as we were pulling into town, it was bumper-to-bumper traffic, incredibly busy. And as we're pulling into this little town, I look over to the left, and someone had parked a big SUV in a very visible location and had a very large sign which mentioned an auto mechanic shop. And it said, "This particular shop ruined our engine and will not take responsibility." Now imagine hundreds and hundreds of people were seeing this sign as they drove in, and just a few minutes later, as they looked to the other side of the street, they're going to see this particular business that was being talked about. And imagine all of these people and all of those machines. Someone's going to need some mechanical work, but someone had done that detraction and taken away from the business. So detractors are harmful to your organization. They're harmful to your charter school. Okay, so you wonder what those Net Promoter Scores mean. And what I've done is I've listed here several of the NPS stars.
I know.
You can see we've got Costco is one of my wife's favorites. It's got a very high score. In fact, when you look at these scores, anything over 50 is really a pretty good score if you're rating your school. But if you get up into the 70s and 80s, you're really doing a great job. You've got lots of loyal customers who are outnumbering those detractors, and hopefully you're getting rid of those detractors or turning them into loyal customers as you go. And you can see some of those companies have been able to do this for a long, long time. And if we're in an auditorium now or in a room where we could raise hands, I'd say, how many of you have recently used Amazon? And my experience is that most hands go up in the air, because Amazon's one of those that's people use often, and they use it because they have good experiences. So what about your customers? So there on the handout, I've recreated that question based upon what your charter school or your organization might be. So think to yourself, based on your experiences here, how likely is it that you would recommend your particular charter school to a friend or family member if you were one of those customers? Now, as you answer that, think about it. Do we have some people who might be detractors? Do I need to pay some extra attention to them? Do I need to work on how to take care of my customers? And we'll talk about some ideas how to do that here in just a minute. Go ahead and put down what score you think you're earning at this point. Now, the name of our training, the training that we do when we take generally about 3 hours with a faculty and staff, is called Customers Only Want Two Things. And we break this down and we give lots of ideas around these two things. The first one is solve my problem. Whatever it is that I might need, try to solve that problem, whether it be a registration issue, a grade issue, or just a safety issue, whatever that might be. The next part is really important. It's the idea of leave me feeling great about the experience. I was in a charter school recently doing a training, and I felt great as I left because I had been treated as a wonderful customer. But what I enjoyed more was when I watched students walk into that office and I saw the face of the secretary who was greeting people there light up anytime she saw a student. So think about this question here. What are ways that we can be uniquely nice to our customers? Because that's the third thing. Be uniquely nice to me. How can you be uniquely nice to a customer? What are things in your particular building, in your particular setup, in your registration process, those types of things that can make a difference? Jeff, do you mind talking a little bit about how that might work for like an online charter school? I think we might have lost Jeff just for a second there. We'll maybe come back to him in just a minute. I want to go on and just talk about how important it is to focus on your employees, because remember, you really can't differentiate here. Where we differentiate is here. People are our only competitive advantage. My wife worked for about 36 years for a local bank, had a number of branches, and she started there when we were just married many years ago. And her main job over those years was to be a customer service representative. Every month that she worked at that bank, they had training, and every month the training had a component on customer service. And I remember asking her one time, God, do you ever get tired of hearing about customer service? She says, oh no, that's why we exist. We take care of our customers. And for me, that was important to recognize that we don't do a ton of training in our profession in helping people understand how important customers are. And that's why I've been so passionate about this training that we do. You know, as you can see on your handout there, Stephen Covey, he's one of these people from Utah who made an incredible addition to our life. He understood people, he understood organizations, but he said if you put really great people in really poor systems, the systems will win every time. And we need to remember that as we think about our schools and what goes on. So think about this. What systems in your particular charter school might frustrate your customers? Now, as I've been in many charter schools in recent years, the most common one I hear is the drop-off pickup procedure. And it's been really interesting to watch schools as they address that particular system to see if they can improve things for their folks. Because, you know, customer loyalty is about building those relationships, and relationships are built on trust. Trust is an issue, and this is kind of going along with that Covey quote. If you take people and you add great people and great systems, you'll have high level of trust. And that's why Stephen Covey said, organizations don't behave, people behave. So the main purpose of our program is to help people learn and to practice these behaviors as they win customer loyalty and they build these positive relationships at work. But we also want to give people some autonomy, and so one of the fun things we've done is create what's called a hot tip deck. And we actually have several of them, and I'll describe them to us. If people can practice things, they do pretty well. And so if you look on that third page, we'll come back to the second page of your handout, but look on the third page, you'll see an example of several examples of some of the hot tip cards from our education deck. We have a youth deck, an elementary deck. We also have a leadership deck. And you notice these cards are pretty unique. They've got a great activity to do that out of the 36, 37 of those, people can choose one or two that work for them, that make a difference. The fun part is when you look on the back of the deck and you'll see 21 different boxes for them to keep track. And then I love the quotes that are included as well. It's been fun for me to go back and visit schools where they've had this training, and the secretary, receptionist, and others will say, hey, look at the card I'm working on today, and they're keeping track of that, and they've been working on their skills and trying to improve things. As it says right there in your handout, common sense isn't always common practice. And so these are things that people understand they ought to be doing, but it helps them actually do the practice rather than just say, oh, I really know you ought to do that, but can we get them to actually do it? As we kind of wrap this up, this is a quote that many of you have heard before, but it's important in this particular area of improvement in your schools that people will not necessarily remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. It's important for us to remember that particular part. I've listed a few things on next steps. The idea that if you were interested in having the full training for your team, that's something that we like to do. We're excited to tell you that we also have, besides our hot tip cards, various decks, we have over 8 of these quick cards. These are a little bit bigger cards. They have information on the front and back. They have lots of other ideas, and depending on the particular position in a school or a school system that a person might be serving in, we've got several of these quick cards that match up. Now my favorite one, and the one that I have people ask about the most, is this one. Because, you know, that person might be walking into your office one of these days. They might be walking into your school. Those difficult guests, they're already upset before they even get to you, and then certain things that we can say or do might set them off, and there might be a real explosion there in your office. And so one of the things we like to do is to give some extra training on how to serve difficult guests, how to meet their needs, and how to diffuse some of these situations that are so difficult and challenging in those moments. Just wanted to give a second here in case there are some other questions, Ben. If you got some other things that you want to, if there are some people that have asked some things, I'd be happy to address those for just a minute or two here while we're wrapping things up. And I've got a couple of notices here. People just wanting to know the best way to get in touch with us. I've listed there my email and my phone number, and you're welcome to contact me directly. Also in your handout, there's info@visionbound.com where you can learn about many of our other training opportunities and leadership training, and there's the Vision Bound website there as well. We hope to hear from you. We've been recording this particular webinar, and we would like to know if you're interested in being invited to future webinars. Let us know. As you leave the webinar today, you'll have an opportunity to fill out questionnaire to find some things out. I don't think it's quite as slick of a questionnaire as the ultimate question is, because it's tied in with our GoToWebinar control panel here. But we appreciate you being with us today. We hope you have a wonderful experience as you work in finishing up this particular school year and preparing for the next one. Just a reminder, at Vision Bound, our motto is that we release human potential by accelerating greatness in people, teams, and organizations. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful summer.
Thanks, everybody.